What's up everyone, Marshall Mullen here, and today I'm going to talk to you about the drivetrain that I have on all of my turbo mountain bikes. Now if you've noticed, on all of my bikes, the Levo, the Canevo, and the Levo SL, all the bikes have a 12-speed drivetrain setup. There's a reason that I do that. These bikes typically come out of the box with an 11-speed setup. Usually that is 11 to 42 tooth cassette. So it's a slightly smaller range the way these bikes come out of the box. I've played around with a lot of different drivetrain setups with these bikes, and this is by far the best. So let me sort of break it down as to why this is better for your turbo mountain bike. Now before I say why this is better, I want to say a lot of people who are I guess new to the turbo world suggest that you don't need a wide gear range for the back. They say, oh, you can just use a few gears, and some people and companies have even experimented with, I don't know, like an 8-speed cassette. And it's a narrower range because you have the power of the motor and the e-bike assisting you. You don't need that range. I completely disagree with this, and here's why. If you've been listening to me ever since I've been riding these turbo mountain bikes, I am always talking about how cadence is so important when riding these bikes. In order to get the best performance out of these bikes, you have to be spinning at the optimal cadence all the time. If you're not familiar with cadence, what that is it's essentially the RPM that your feet are pedaling. And why that's so important is because electric motors work best when they're spinning fast. That's just the nature of electric motors. Now, there's a balance in that. You don't want to go too fast. If you're going too fast, it's just too much. Your motor's winding out and it's making noise, and you don't need to do that. But at the same time, if you're in a high gear here and you're lugging it up a climb and you're like, and the motor is doing more than your pedaling is doing, now you're making it worse on the other end. You're lugging the motor, you can snap belts, and that's just not what you want to be doing. So it's very important on these bikes to always be spinning at the most optimal cadence. Best power, best battery life, it's the easiest on your motor. You're just going to get the best performance out of your bike. So with that in mind, it doesn't make sense to have less gears on the back to where the motor is making up for the lack of gears. It's actually the opposite. It makes more sense to have a much wider range of gears where you can always be in the most optimal position. Now, let me explain. When I'm out riding these bikes, I am constantly shifting. I shifted a lot when I rode normal mountain bikes. It's on a whole new level with these bikes. I am shifting all the time. And I'm always shifting so that my gear is always in the perfect spot to keep the right cadence. Once you get on these bikes, you'll realize, wow, there is a certain cadence, a certain speed that I'm pedaling that these bikes are operating the best. So once it's a sweet spot, and when you can find where that is, it's very easy to stay in it by shifting all the time. So if you're like riding down the road, you're like, okay, there's a little rock coming, I'm gonna shift down, and and okay, it's getting a little bit steeper here, I'm gonna shift up, So you're always shifting to get the ultimate performance. So to summarize that, the reason why I prefer the larger 12-speed drivetrain is because you can always be in the most optimal gear to give you the best motor performance. Now, the other reason I like to go with the 12-speed drivetrain is for climbing. I know you're probably thinking, you don't need that because motors just have a ton of power and they can just push you up the hill. Yes, that is true, but here is what I have found. These motors have a lot of power, so with the standard cassettes that come on this bike, you can motor up the hill no problem. Just has plenty of power. But here's what happens. When you're climbing up a rocky hill or a steep, loose hill, the motor is going to be putting out so much power in order to turn that wheel over to get you up the hill that you're losing control and traction. So when you put a bigger cassette, like this 12-speed setup right here, which is a 10 to 50 tooth, if you go up into that large 50 tooth, you can reduce the power on your bike down to, say a middle power. Rather than being in turbo and just powering up the hill, you can reduce your power down a little bit. Then you go in this large 50 tooth and you're able to have a much better, more stable ability to climb the hill. Once you do that and reduce the power back, there's a little less torque going on in the motor, which actually helps you. It slows everything down and keeps it in much more control when going up technical loose sections. There's nothing wrong with putting your bike in a higher gear and motoring up the hill in high. There's nothing wrong with that. But once you get on terrain that's a little more loose and technical and requires a little more agility, I guess, going up the hill, you have much more control of the bike. If you reduce your power, getting rid of some of that torque off the top, and you go into this ultra low, for example, 50 tooth, everything is much more controlled. So that's basically the reason why I am running this 12-speed Eagle drivetrain on all my e-bikes. There's nothing wrong with the stock setup, but as you begin to ride and shift more, you will realize that this will help the performance of your bike in many ways. The shifting is very smooth. You're always in the right gear. Shift, 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 shift. I am shifting so much. If you ride next to me, it's just a shift machine. I'm always shifting. So that's good. You want to do that because your motor is always in the perfect, I guess you're spinning always in the perfect cadence. And so that's really going to help you. And then when you get on steep technical climbs, drop it all the way into that 50 tooth and everything slows down and it becomes much more controlled, and drop your power down on your bike. Reduce that power. You will be surprised how controlled everything is. So that's my theory on this 12-speed drivetrain on e-bikes. A lot of people out there who are new to the e-bike world will say, oh, that's, you can reduce your gears, you can put a small cassette and the motor will power you through it. And okay, that's fine. But once you really ride your bike a lot and get in tune with your bike, you can feel it. Having that wide range of gears will help you so much. Heck, this 12-speed, I wish I had a 24-speed. I would run it. If I could have, a 10 to 50 tooth 24-speed, I would run that. It would be amazing because you could always be in the best gear. So don't be afraid to shift. Don't be afraid to always be in the perfect gear. It will help you tremendously with your riding and the performance of your bike. So I hope that helps. This is, I think, one of the most important topics about bike setup right now. I've tried everything, and this is the biggest, most important issue out there right now with people learning how to ride e-bikes and learning how to operate them at the best. This is a huge difference. So get out there, try it. Any 12-speed setup will work. I recommend this one. Later, I'm going to do a video on the AXS, the SRAM AXS Eagle. I've got that on my bikes. Stuff's amazing. That's a whole nother topic. I'll do that. But any 12-speed setup will do what I'm trying to do right here if I get the ultimate shifting performance out of your bike. So I hope that helps. I will see you guys on the next video.